Okay, cool. All right, so spent a lot of time trying to figure out a title for this series. Nonlinear Futures is where I've landed, but very open to other ideas. But yeah, we're going to talk about autonomous vehicles today. And so as I was kind of thinking about a lot of the things that are out there right now in terms of, futurism, it's always like the future of blank. And I feel like you could just insert X there and everyone's really focused on, what that thing is going to look like. But I feel like instead of solving for X, we should solve for Y, and kind of take this pause and use this as an opportunity, our conversations today and just going forward, to kind of break that sense of inertia that the future is inevitable and like driverless cars are going to show up and look a certain way and like we can't do anything about it. So solving for why is just asking, if this happens and leads to that, why is that a future we would want to inhabit? So about me is the video blocking part of the slides?
Just the very top, but you're good.
I'll leave it. I am not a wizard, as much as it pains me to say. I was a big Harry Potter fan, but as we all know, with strategic foresight, I'm not here to tell you what the future is. I'm also not an engineer, so I, read a fair amount about the technology side, but couldn't tell you in any, real detail how all of it works behind the scenes. So we're not really going to be talking, or I'm not really going to be talking about that today. If that's something you guys are more familiar with and excited about, I'm happy to let the conversation go there. But I am a collector and a connector. So I just pick up all of these different things and try and figure out how they make sense together and what they mean and what it tells us about where we might be going. So why talk about driverless cars? I don't really, I think I'm just gonna close this. I don't really care that much about cars. I have one, but I'm not like a car guy. But this is an Instagram account that I made maybe 5 years ago for a toy Land Rover that I thought was cool. Got some good traction, 3 followers, 3 posts. So yeah, feel free to go follow my toy Landy. But really, I guess, driverless cars allows us to talk about things like culture and history and design and ethics and mythology, which are all things that I'm actually interested in. So I'm going to run through 5 questions that I've been thinking about, and then, as I said, we'll open it up for some discussion. And the first is, what happens to the car chase scene? So in this world with autonomous vehicles, it's fairly likely that there will be, some way to control them, to bring them to a controlled stop. And so all of the, movies and mythology we have around the chase scene, like what happens to that? And so if you've seen Thelma and Louise, I feel like this is the like epitome of what it means to be American. You've got the West, you've got this car flying off the edge. And to me, this is like freedom. And that's, a big part of our kind of cultural DNA. And so as something like driverless cars emerges and you lose that like chase scene, how does that change the stories that we tell about ourselves? What do we end up using instead of, these type of images to represent freedom? And just, I don't know, I feel like there's all of these kind of collective psyche knock-on effects that come from driverless cars showing up. And this is kind of on that note. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with the really famous goal. This is Diego Maradona at the 1986 World Cup. It was Argentina versus England. Just for context, the two countries were really not in a good place at that time. The Falkland Wars had just happened, and so they're at the World Cup. Argentina is down, I think, by 1 goal, and Diego Maradona runs up, realizes he's not going to make this header, and sticks his arm up and punches the ball into the goal, and then goes on to celebrate as if he, hadn't used his hand and cheated. But the reason I bring this up is, with the technology that's emerging in sports, you have these video assisted review in soccer and something similar in a lot of other sports. But basically, this kind of goal could never happen today. And like, this was 40 years ago, and is probably, one of the best known and like most important goals in history. And it's just, I feel like it represents this human element of kind of cheating the system and being a little coy. And that was also just a big part of like Argentinian, like their own sense of identity. So yeah, kind of bringing in technology, what elements of culture are impacted. And, it's not just a, thing in the US. Lots of different cultures have, different relationships with vehicles. So in Nairobi, you have the matatus. Those are these minibuses that are really colorfully decorated. You've got a guy hanging out the window, kind of flagging down people. In India, you have these really elaborately decorated trucks. One thing you'll see on a lot of them is horn okay, please, which basically means if you're going to overtake them, to just like honk your horn. And I don't know, I feel like there's something about the like human element in these that when I think of driverless cars, I tend to think of more like kind of shiny, generic, I don't know, metal boxes. And so I don't know, I would hate to lose these things. So what happens to the car chase scene? And that's kind of the first question. The next question is, have we been down this old town road before? So I was trying to think about, what like the role of horses as a past form of mobility, and what their role looks like today, and then apply that to what non-autonomous cars would look like in the future. And this is something I came across a quote from Elon Musk saying, there will be people who have non-autonomous cars, just like people have horses. It would just be unusual to use that as a mode of transport. And so, I feel like that could go different ways. We could end up with more of the Kentucky Derby, like, which is generally, I'd say, more of an elite type event and social scene. But, we do have already, all of these different kind of subcultures built around cars, not as a mode of transport, but as, an art object, or, lots, I don't know, where cars aren't performing a function. They're more for entertainment. So, maybe the lowrider and like that kind of car is what remains when driverless cars end up here. And then just trying to think about where are our blind spots. So at this point, probably heard like science fiction is always about the present, is always talking about the present. Um, and, retrofuturism is a fun rabbit hole to go down on YouTube. This was a video that I came across called Key to the Future, which was a good pun, released by General Motors in 1956. It was set in 1976, and they predicted that there would be this autopilot mode and some kind of element of a driverless car future. But if you can see in the top left, that was the kind of radio control tower that when you're in your car, you would like phone into them to this guy with his little microphone thing down there, and he would kind of clear you for takeoff into the autopilot lane. And I don't know, I just think it's funny, and it kind of reflects that in the mid 50s, that was the like golden age of air travel, and you see that reflected in their vision of the future. Another, if you've seen Total Recall, the Johnny Cab is kind of an iconic vision of a driverless car. It's got this super creepy human robot looking thing driver in the front seat who talks to the passenger and uses like a stick, basically like a steering wheel. Like a robot is using a steering wheel to control the car, which is so strange to me. And just coming back to the chase scene, at one point Arnold rips the Johnny Cab guy out of the seat so that he can use the steering mechanism himself. But yeah, I don't know, like why did they design it this way? Maybe robotics were taking off. Maybe it just looked good on screen. But I think this is just like another, I don't know that we would ever really imagine this type of driver in our autonomous vehicle futures today. So big question, who lives and who dies? If you've seen The Good Place, you have maybe seen this episode about the trolley problem. This is like a classic ethics question where basically you're on these train tracks and there's a lever next to you, and you can choose to pull that lever and the train will switch tracks, and instead of hitting 5 people, it'll hit 1 person. So you're kind of in this position where you have to decide, do you let the train go, or do you intervene? But like by acting, you are in some ways more responsible for that 1 person's death. And so there's a group at MIT called The Moral Machine that has basically built a simulation where there's all these different types of scenarios, and you have to decide whether the car goes straight and hits the people in the crosswalk or swerves into the divider or into the barrier, killing the people in the car. And excuse me, it gets really complicated. And some of the factors are, that a woman is pregnant, or it's a male or female executive, or it's a homeless man or an elderly person. If you see the light down here, in some of the scenarios, they are obeying traffic laws, and others they're not. I think this next one, yeah, you can see, the traffic sign is on red, but they're still stepping out into the street. And so, yeah, like in this scenario, do you choose to kill the two people because one is a criminal and like, and they're disobeying the traffic laws, or do you just always go for the least number of people dying? But I guess just kind of to circle back, the reason that this is important is, this is a situation where the brakes have failed. The car is going to hit someone. There's no like fail safe. And so engineers and companies, and I guess collectively, we have to decide who are we comfortable with letting that car hit, and like code that into the car, like into the program, because we can't leave it up to the car to decide. But then, so it just opens up all of these ethical questions, and then issues of liability come up as well. Is it, if something goes wrong, is it the company who's at fault, or like, would an insurance company even insure these these services? I know there was the Tesla autopilot accident a year or so ago, and if I remember right, the driver ended up getting in trouble because they weren't paying close enough attention, and that was like their job. And so I feel like we'll kind of see these different cases along the way, and start to come to some semblance of what the legal ramifications are of accidents. But the last question is, do we need road rage? This was the least offensive road rage photo that I could find. And so this was something that I thought of. I chatted with the guy from Institute from the Future who came up with the systems mythology framework a couple weeks ago. And one thing that he said that really stuck with me was, when he's thinking about futures, he's kind of always thinking about having a path for red people and red behaviors so that it doesn't break the blue, green, or purple future. And I don't know, I feel like that's super interesting. And, I'm not advocating for road rage at the level of people getting out of their cars and physically beating each other up, but maybe honking your horn, or just like getting cut off and then being able to yell in your car, like maybe that is a useful outlet to have. And if we've designed that out of our society, maybe we see that rage coming out in other ways. All speculation. So yeah, just to recap, 5 questions were: what happens to the car chase scene? Have we been down this old town road before? Where are our blind spots? Who lives and who dies? And do we need road rage? And I'll just leave you with a final quote. This was from the camp exhibit at the Met. I think I was there last year. But I really love this, the fascism of usefulness. So just going back to that like image of a generic metal box as a vehicle. I don't know, I mean, that solves some technical problems, but is that really the future that we want to live in? And I feel like usefulness should not be the only metric. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And we're back.
Thank you for doing this, Francis. That was so
Love
good.
it.
Love it.
So I didn't have a chance to read any of the chat comments.
We've been chatting.
I was gonna say I really love that fascism of usefulness, because I feel like it gets said a lot in the like future of fashion, even like people are like, oh, like in the future we'll all wear these like boiler suits that like do all of these multitudes of things. And the truth is humans are just big old decorator crabs. We like adore bodies and our spaces to like varying degrees. But I think this idea that utilitarianism is the future is not taking into account the truly human aspect of wanting to adorn ourselves and our things. Like I like those buses and trucks in India and Nairobi are like way cooler than any car I see on the road. Like I am bored by the cars that are on the road now. And so like the fact, like, you know, I'm glad Rob's not here because he's a big Tesla truck lover. I think it looks gross. Like I don't like it.
Yeah.
I want something pretty. Like my dream car is Austin Healey or like a 1950 Chevy. Like there's something to be said about the beauty that comes with form. And I think, the idea that it's just all utilitarian is not accurate.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about that too because it, like, if we go back to the like, if the value proposition, like in the customer segment, you look at the jobs to be done, and you have like the functional ones that I feel that the automated cars kind of try to cover, but there's also like all the emotional ones that are the one that actually make the customer make the decision. So it's like there's people that actually like wants to be more like efficient and all about that, but especially with driving, I feel that it's a lot like why people get motorbikes, because there's this sense of adventure and things that they want to feel. Why people take a bike or things like there's so many things that it's not only like the transaction to going from A to B. It's all like, why are the other layers and why I'm choosing like this certain type of transportation instead of another one. And I feel that all the emotional part is just like where what is that emotional choice that people like doing, and is automated car actually a way that it's available, it's able to cover that.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think a little bit about just in like artist renderings of the future or of new buildings, skyscrapers. Like you rarely see people in those. It's just like the shiny building or, you know, the concept car. I don't know, like why don't we see a bedazzled car as someone's vision of the future? Like why is that? Yeah, is it harder to?
I mean, there's a pair of shoes that has a hyper thin LCD screen on them, so you can change your shoes to like have any print or like the fact that people are just imagining that it's going to be this silver box just shows that they're just basing off of what we already see. Like we have all this technology, like why not make it so you can have like, you don't have to go and get your car, like a new skin for your car. You can just like change it using an app to be whatever you want, you know, like, especially if we're saying that they're going to get in less accidents like with each other because they're able to like, you know, gauge distance and all of these things. Like why not beef up the outside so you can have it be nice, be pretty.
I have to eat because I need to go outside because I've been sitting in this chair. Yeah, but I wanted to quickly say, Frances, thank you so much. This is wonderful. My first, like in the first 5 minutes, I was like, all I want is for this group to have a goal to get Frances on the TED Talk stage one day. Like I literally was like, we must do it. We must get you there. You are incredible.
I have a cousin that works at TED.
We're already
Let's just ask people named Ted if they know how to get there.
But seriously, thank you always for just like provoking good questions, bringing groups together. I have, you know, I've said this, I've really valued working with you this year and all of you in this group. This is great. This is like exactly how I want to spend my 5 p.m. on a Wednesday, but now I want to go outside. So I will leave all of you now. But thank you so much. Really enjoyed this. And
thanks, Maren.
Bye.
All right.